Imagine surviving for 72 days. Without food, without water, without shelter. Hard to even imagine, right? But for 45 people, this became a horrifying reality. How many made it out alive? And what did they have to do to survive? Stay with us, because today we dive deep into a story that is both terrifying and inspiring. When nature unleashes its fury, even the bravest souls tremble. This is the chilling tale of Flight 571, a story that you could call either the greatest miracle or the darkest moment of human survival. It all began on October 12, 1972, when a chartered plane from Uruguay took off for Santiago, the capital of Chile. On board were 45 passengers, mostly a rugby team, their friends, family members, and 9 crew members. They were expecting a short flight, roughly 9 hours. But to get to their destination, the plane had to cross the towering Andes Mountains. Unfortunately, the weather took a sudden turn for the worse. As a safety precaution, the flight was diverted and made an emergency landing in Mendoza, Argentina. The passengers waited overnight. The next day, October 13th, despite the bad weather, the pilot, an experienced man who had flown this route 29 times, decided to continue. The flight took off around 2 p.m. They were flying at 18,000 feet, but due to worsening weather and poor visibility, the pilot had to rely solely on his instruments. After some time, he believed they had cleared the Andes and requested permission to descend. ATC, Air Traffic Control, asked if they had crossed the mountain range. The pilot confirmed. Permission to descend to 11,500 feet was granted. But the pilot was tragically mistaken. They were still in the heart of the Andes. As the plane descended, a massive mountain emerged in their path. The pilot tried to pull up, but it was too late. The tail of the aircraft slammed into the mountain, tearing off the back of the plane. Several passengers were thrown out mid-air and died instantly. The front section of the plane crashed onto a glacier at 350 kilometers h, disintegrating on impact. 12 people, including the pilots, died immediately. 33 remained, most of them injured, disoriented, and stranded in the freezing wilderness. The crash site was at a brutal altitude of 3,570 meters. As the sun set, temperatures dropped to minus 30 degrees C. Among the injured was Nando Parado, who had slipped into a coma. With no help in sight and darkness approaching, 4 rescue planes began searching. But the combination of snow, clouds, and the white color of the aircraft made it nearly invisible. Rescue efforts were called off for the night. Inside the broken fuselage, survivors huddled together for warmth. They hoped they'd be found by morning. But the true ordeal was only just beginning. By the next morning, 5 more passengers had succumbed to the cold. Now only 28 remained. Search operations resumed. 11 aircraft combed the Andes. To be noticed, survivors used lipstick to write SOS on the plane and built large crosses in the snow using suitcases. Still, the rescue planes flew by, unaware of the cries for help beneath them. By October 15th, hope was slipping away. Food had run out. Snow glare was damaging their eyes. On October 16th, Nando Parado woke from his coma, only to learn that his mother had died and his sister was critically injured. Soon, she too passed away. 8 days after the crash, the survivors heard the most devastating news. Search operations had officially been called off. Rescuers believed no one could still be alive. Now the survivors were completely on their own. There were 2 choices: give in to the cold and starvation, or fight back with everything they had. They stuffed insulation from the plane seats into their clothes. They made boots from seat covers. They melted snow for water. But food, there was none. And then, they made the most haunting decision in survival history. They chose to consume the bodies of the dead, their own friends and family. This act wasn't born of cruelty, but of desperation. They prayed, cried, and debated. But in the end, the will to live pushed them to take that step. On the 16th night, disaster struck again. An avalanche buried the wreckage under tons of snow. 8 more people were killed. Now, only 19 remained. It took them 3 days to dig their way out. At this point, they knew waiting meant dying. 3 of the less injured survivors volunteered to go search for help. On November 15th, after 33 days, they left. They carried strips of dried human meat and wore the warmest clothes they could find. Soon, they stumbled upon the rear section of the plane, still intact. Inside, they found extra food and batteries. They attempted to connect the batteries to the radio, but failed. By December 11th, 59 days after the crash, another avalanche struck. 3 more survivors died. Only 16 remained. Then came a bold decision. Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa chose to climb over the Andes with no mountaineering gear, no map, and just 3 days' worth of food. They fashioned a sleeping bag from plain insulation. Each night, they shared that one sleeping bag under the open sky, enduring 30-degree temperatures. On the 4th day, they reached a peak, only to realize there were more mountains beyond. One of the 3 turned back, but Nando and Canessa kept going. Then they saw a stream, a sign of life. They followed it. On December 20th, after 61 kilometers of trekking, they saw 3 men across a river. They begged for help. The next day, one of the men returned and tossed over a paper and pen wrapped in a stone. Nando wrote down everything. The man took the message and rushed to the authorities. On December 22nd, after 70 days, a rescue team arrived. What they saw left them speechless, emaciated, frostbitten, but alive. All 16 survivors were rescued. The world was stunned. This story wasn't just about survival. It was about human willpower, unity, and the terrifying choices one must face in order to live. Out of 45 people, only 16 survived. But those 16 proved something extraordinary. That when everything is lost, hope can still remain. If you were in their place, would you have made it out alive? Would you have had the courage to do the unthinkable? This was the unbelievable story of Flight 571, a story of endurance, tragedy, and the triumph of the human spirit. For more such gripping and inspiring stories, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in the next video.